want to welcome Matt Dudley, who is Transit Manager for the City of Avondale. He's going to be talking with us today about opportunities to electrify public transit, specifically the case for microtransit. And I know he has been working closely with Danae Pressler, who is their sustainability officer, in figuring out ways to expand public transit. And certainly microtransit is one of those ways to do that, and how this like on-demand service can incorporate electric vehicles into the fleet. And he's got a new program called WeRide that I'm excited to hear about as well. So Matt, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us and being able to share your expertise. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. All right, can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Well, yes, thanks for inviting me. Danae Pressler, our city sustainability officer, is right down the street, or right down pretty much the aisle from me. And so she came up to me one day. She's like, "Hey, Matt, do you know what? Have you ever thought about electrifying your microtransit fleet?" And I was like, a little bit. She's like, "I got something for you." So I've been talking with her for, oh my goodness, probably since our new microtransit service started here in the last few months, about looking at possibilities of electrifying our microtransit. So let's just kind of jump right into it. And let me give everybody kind of a primer on kind of like what is microtransit. So I like to tell people, a lot of people have taken Uber, a lot of people have taken Lyft. So really, you can either look at it two ways. If you're a transit professional, you can say, hey, this is just another fancy version, or like a tech-based version of Dial-A-Ride. Those who aren't familiar with public transportation, I could say, hey, it's a public transportation version of Uber and Lyft. So it's very demand response. It's a ride sharing service. I like to tell you that it's not a ride hailing service. You know, with Uber and Lyft, you go on the app, you book it. You're pretty much ride hailing, and it's a very individual ride. With us, no, we want to make sure we are encompassing the public transportation aspect of it. And we do get a lot of ride sharing. I think looking at this week's numbers right now, live, it looks like about 36% of our service has some sort of ride share capability where, you know, if you're booking a trip, you're going to a place, you're also going to probably get someone else being picked up. So it's very public transportation like it. Again, but it's more of a small scale vehicle. You can kind of see this one, you know, from collected to individual, from fixed to flexible. On-demand microtransit kind of does it all, where we take, you know, the small scale vehicles. In our case, we are using currently Chrysler Pacificas. It's also tech enabled. That's the big aspect of it. And why we were thinking about it kind of being about 90% of our trips are booked completely online. There is the capability to call into the office if you're not so handy with the tech aspect of it. But about 90% of our trips are booked, are just like you would on kind of an Uber and Lyft. And again, it's a flexible service. So why we have virtual stops, I'll talk about that a little bit in the future. In our case, we have over 280 virtual stops, where the service that WeRide replaced in North Avondale had about 30 fixed stops along a fixed route. But let me hit a little bit kind of on the background of kind of like where we got to where we are today. So, you know, as we were looking at developing this pilot service, we actually, I was actually not here at Avondale at the time. I was actually working in the city of Glendale, but both Avondale and Goodyear worked with the Maricopa County Association of Governments to better understand kind of the local transit needs. We were in the middle of COVID here. Ridership was kind of extremely low on the Zoom service. So what they did was they commissioned it and examined all the transit services, the population and employment conditions, and the future growth of both the cities of Avondale and Goodyear. So the study included everything you would always see, you know, review of best practice in suburban environment. And it, you know, at the end of the study, it became apparent that the transit needs and the expectations in both Avondale and Goodyear have evolved over the years in our travel patterns and our popular perceptions and technology in general. So the North Avondale area was kind of chosen as the first kind of test case for a proposed microtransit pilot program. And kind of what I mentioned earlier, this area was served by it really was a low ridership neighborhood bus circulator called the Avondale Zoom. So again, we had about 20, 30 stops. It was running Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to about 10 p.m. And in that section, we were only getting anywhere from like 20 to 30 people per day. So again, not a very effective use of public dollars. So we thought, hey, you know, this would be a better way is looking at this new microtransit service. Why? It was kind of new to the region and new, honestly, to the state of Arizona. Microtransit, there's been a lot of microtransit services. So we had a lot to kind of look at from California to Texas to New York to Canada about what we were doing. So what we ended up at the end of the day was looking at a 12 square mile service. And, you know, to put it in perspective, it's pretty much the service pretty much of Avondale north of Interstate 10, about between 99th Avenue and Dysart Road. So I-10 to Indian School, so about 12 square miles. Lots of points of interest. The study consultant said, hey, you know what? You have Estrella Mountain Community College. You have Gateway Pavilions. We do have a civic center to the south that we kind of roped in there, but we also have medical centers and hospitals. And we've also kind of gone outside our zone into the city of Phoenix, where we are actually hitting a major hospital complex over there around, I think it's 91st Avenue and Thomas Road. Again, I mentioned it's app-based. So just like an Uber and a Lyft, you can go on to the Google, the Apple Store and download the service. Features, we just started our fare payment at the beginning of the month. The phone, we have a phone and we have online tracking, just like you would kind of see with Uber and Lyft. Service levels. Why right now it is a pilot service both in the city of Avondale and Goodyear. So right now we are working only working on weekdays 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Our vehicles are, you know, a mix of wheelchair accessible vehicles, mostly minivans with bicycle racks. So we have 3 vehicles running in each zone. 2 are wheelchair accessible and 1 is just a basic type of minivan with the WeRide logo. Virtual stops, we have 280 plus virtual stops and just Avondale alone. I think Goodyear has 300 plus. And again, with virtual stops, really different than what you would see with a traditional bus stop you'd like see at Valley Metro. These WeRide buses don't have to stop at every single stop. It is a virtual stop. So for us, it is something like, for the most part in these suburban type of neighborhoods, everybody knows their community mailbox. So about 30 to 40% of all community mailboxes in a lot of these suburban areas, that's your virtual stop. That is your pickup location. And so when you're booking your trip, that is where the app will kind of point you to. Price is very cheap. We wanted to keep it, you know, very much like you would see getting on a Valley Metro bus, where it's $2 a trip. We do have different types of fares. We're looking at promotions. We just started with our fare at the beginning of the month. But for instance, if you're a veteran, senior, disabled, a student at Estrella Mountain Community College, you're only paying $1 per trip. And then if you're general public, it's going to be $2. And it's for anybody 16 and above. If you're 5 and younger, it's free. If you're under 16, as long as you're going with a pay-faring adult, you can take the service. So this is just kind of a quick shot of kind of our logo, what our vehicle looks like. This is one of our wheelchair equipped vehicles and kind of what the app looks like. If anyone's ever kind of curious, please feel free. You can also go to our brand new website, which was just started, which is WeRideAZ.com. It has all the information on there. It's kind of like our clearinghouse of WeRide information. It gives you all that particular information of what we're due, where we go, our service days, our service hours, and all of that. We wanted to make sure that if we are, you know, WeRide is both in Avondale and Goodyear, and I think coming soon to the city of Surprise. that we had kind of one uniform site where you can kind of look for that information. But each city does have on their website some additional information about the WeRide services that could be more specific to those cities. So again, Microtransit and what we have, this is a very data-driven type of approach, and this is just kind of a snapshot of the plethora of information that we get each and every day. So each and every day I get an Excel spreadsheet. So does the city of Goodyear, talking about the service from the previous day, but we also have a Tableau dashboard, and there's actually another website that has more of the day-to-day information. So this is just kind of a real quick snapshot of our customer experience dashboard, very much kind of like Uber and Lyft, where you finish your ride, you get prompted with a rating and some comments. So those comments come directly to us in the city. So if you do leave a comment with the information like, hey, you know what, a really good driver, or hey, a lot of them is like, hey, could you please expand the service to weekend, or could you please look at exploring the service to the south? We'll get a lot of this information that we really had kind of a tough time getting beforehand on the fixed route service, but this is kind of more tailor-made to more of that demand response. So we're getting this information almost kind of, on some cases, we're getting it real time. One case, it's, the day before, and this one, we can just absolutely get anything from, ridership, customer experience, productivity, planning, all this information. And right now, looking at both zones, you can see that our average ride rating for both the service is about 4.9 out of 5, and that our on-time performance, both for pickup and drop-off, is just a little north of 97%. Our average direct distance is about 3 miles. A lot of information. You can see ridership over time kind of on the top right. You can see it kind of going down a little bit, but again, we had a lot of Estrella Mountain Community College usage, so they are out for the semester. They are coming back next week, but also we implemented fares January 1st, so we know we were going to see a little bit of a dip, but actually it wasn't that much of a dip compared to what we were expecting. So let's talk about expansion. Let's talk about how maybe EVs will kind of tie into the future. So as we're looking, you'll see, this is the light green is kind of our current zone. And right now, again, as I mentioned, we are using 3 vehicles, but we're talking about, all right, do we look at, potential expansion for weekends? We've gotten a lot of comments for that. We've also got a lot of comments for, hey, can you maybe add City of Avondale, anything that's north of Lower, maybe Buckeye Road, pretty much effectively doubling our zone, which would cause us to move probably from 3 to 7 vehicles. We would probably unify this zone. We're looking at maybe a potential expansion, maybe at the earliest October 2023, but we do have we have a Zoom bus that's still kind of operating in that south section. So we're looking at, the effectiveness of that. It used to be a 50-cent circulator fare. Now it's gone to free. So we're evaluating that. But we're also looking at the future. If we are looking at expansion, maybe a mix of vehicle types. Right now, as you can see, hey, we're just using all these Chrysler Pacificas, but let's talk about, hey, the city, especially working with Danae Pressler, let's talk about, sustainability. How can we as transit reduce our carbon footprint? So this is our current fleet. They're very nice. They're very loud. So First Transit is our operator. It is a turnkey service. So what we've tasked them to do is kind of give us information kind of like on a weekly basis of where are people hearing about the services. So we hand out a lot of business cards. There's a lot of flyers. There's social media kind of presence for WeRide. But we found out that a lot of the information that comes back, again, is, hey, you know what? I saw this interesting looking vehicle out there on the side, on the street looking WeRide, or they would hear word of mouth, maybe from a friend or maybe another student say, hey, try this WeRide service. It's a different type of public transportation. So future fleet configuration, and this is where kind of like Danae and I, so we're transit and sustainability. I'm actually stationed out of the public works department. So that gives me access to a good amount of people. So my supervisor, he is actually in charge of fleet, solid waste, and transit. So he can bring a different picture, a different type of ideas to it. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's talk about a traditional and electrical fleet, but there's something lessons learned. Do we have the infrastructure? For instance, here, this is the Municipal Operations Service Center, the mosque. We do have electric chargers. We also have some level 2 chargers over there at City Hall. So both of those type infrastructure that we would need for our EVs, if we were to expand Microtransit to incorporate those type of vehicles, we do have some of that infrastructure. But again, the types of EVs, what is the appropriate vehicles for service? Again, a lot of this ties into capacity, range. As I was talking to our technology provider, now again, in a traditional dial-a-ride environment, you'll have citizens calling into your call center, and it's usually somebody who's kind of booking that trip. In this case, with being kind of an on-demand service, it's pretty much the algorithm, this technology. So we have to inform the technology, hey, what type of vehicle is out there? If this is an EV vehicle, obviously an EV vehicle is not going to have a range like a gas vehicle. So there's a lot of these things we really have to try to decide, hey, you know what, if you're going to purchase an EV, is this EV going to last half the day, the full day? How's this going to work? And again, it's, you know, the range, the hours of service, and the charging, and how that's going to work. Again, I mentioned it was kind of like a contracted operations service with both First Transit as they pretty much bring the drivers, the supervision, and the vehicles to the table. And RideCo is pretty much the technology. So there's like the Uber Lyft equivalent. When anybody's dealing with stuff, you are dealing with the RideCo app, and then the drivers and the vehicles are contracted out with First Transit. But they have also, you know, just briefly talking with them, it's like, hey, let's add some EVs to the fleet. They're asking all sorts of, you know, the right questions is what I want to hear. Hey, Matt, what's the vehicle configuration? How will the charging work? What about our lunch relief for these vehicles if these vehicles are out there? Can they last all day? Hey, they may last the whole day in January, but what happens in July and August when the Arizona heat is starting to bear down on those vehicles? So there's a lot of questions when you start to try to bring EV into a microtransit operation or even a transit operation in general that we have to think about some of the larger pictures. One of the other questions is right now the base of operations. Currently, WeRide is based out of here at the Avondale Public Works Yard, but in the future, with 3 cities being part of the program here in the near future, we may have to centralize that base of operations outside of the zone. If we do that, hey, you know what, that takes down the range of the vehicles. So we have to be very, very careful about that. Again, more things to think about. Temperature versus payload. Hey, you know what, if there's an EV out here with nobody in there, obviously that's going to get a greater range versus with a vehicle with a whole bunch of payload. And the driver behavior, seeing kind of over the last 20 years, being in a dial-a-ride operations, again, driver behavior kind of impacts the type of vehicles. Hey, you know what, is this driver a fast driver, a slow driver? There's a lot of things to think about on the EV side. And again, the total cost of ownership. How do you make a business case? We, for instance, starting in a couple of weeks, actually, once Danae comes back from vacation, we're talking to the different dealers. We're bringing out a Ford e-Transit. Here you'll see in this picture is the city of Porterville, California. I believe they have, I think it's another style vehicle. But again, these vehicles aren't expensive. We just bought, and First Transit just replaced one of the vehicles that we had. Again, a base Chrysler Pacifica, for instance, $50,000. We'll say, you know, conservative. If you're going to try to buy an EV, oh my goodness, speaking with a couple other cities who are doing that, $180,000. But again, there's some benefit of it. They were saying, hey, Matt, it's not just looking at, you know, if you're using local funds, you got to look at grants. You got to look at the grants getting vehicles. Maybe there's opportunities out there to bring that in there, because at the end of the day, we are trying to, you know, clean the air. So There are long-term costs. Again, the service network and support. What will you have to make sure that you can service these vehicles like you can service any type of any other service to try to make that business case for the total cost of ownership? And kind of what I mentioned earlier was the carrot versus stick. Hey, you know what? There's grants out there to get these vehicles, sometimes, you know, at the state level, mostly at the federal level with the FTA to get those steps. But what are the regulatory requirements that you would need as an agency to make sure that, you know, you're taking care of these vehicles like you need to? So our next step. So we are looking at EV evaluation. So I'm working with Danae on the infrastructure side. So right in the beginning of February, we'll have some the e-transit, the Fords coming out. We've been in conversations looking at with the dealer for the Lightning e-motors vehicles, just to say, hey, you know, can these vehicles work out here? So we're going to be evaluating some of these EVs over the next couple of months to make sure it would kind of work in our system. And at the same time, again, one of the lessons are infrastructure. What do we have? What do we need? What type of infrastructure is out there, both on the Avondale side to make sure that we can kind of, that this works on an operational, on a day-to-day type of basis. Again, the funding. This is not easy. Again, a traditional Chrysler works just fine is only $50,000. To get an EV, it's going to be progressively expensive. I think the Ford Transit is $100,000 before you start adding any of the, maybe adding the range on it. Again, what kind of local funding can you bring? And again, the time frame. This would be nice if I can, you know, roll this out maybe October this year, but maybe that's not the case. So that's what we're trying to do now, is trying to see what can we do to put something in place, because it looks, this is not easy as it's going down to your dealer and getting a vehicle, but it definitely takes, there's a lot more moving parts to get an EV, especially in a microtransit environment. But I do believe it'll be well worth it. And I think the citizens will like it. And again, I think it'll lead to, you know, a little bit of more cleaner air. We're doing our part. Again, you know, the air here in Maricopa County isn't the greatest. So anything that we can do to help, I think, would be very great. And with that, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn on my video and hope the internet doesn't die. Okay, there we go.
Great. Thank you so much. That was a lot to cover in a short time period. Yeah, thank you. So we'd like to open it up to questions. If you'd like to add them to the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself specifically to ask, you know, if you could identify yourself, who you're with, and what your question is, that would be great.
Oh, I see a question about how many riders does each van see for that 12-mile area? So we've set it up where, you know, the wheelchair accessible vans can have a maximum of 3 passengers, and the non-wheelchair accessible vans have 5 spaces. I know miles per gallon is always kind of an important thing, and I wrote that down. Get about 17 to 22 off the standard vehicle. Speaking with some of these e-transit you get anywhere from 53 and above. So that would definitely be helpful when you're looking at the total cost of ownership on that one. Let's see, it says, I work with Danae and live in Avondale. Oh, let's see. Let me see. That's probably in the chat, right?
Yeah, it says.
There we go. Okay, let me see if I can get that going up here.
Yeah, so Billy's saying he lives in Avondale. I see the vans rolling through all the time and see some demonstrations of this at the area events. Great job.
Yep. Marketing is very important on any type of new service. So definitely the social media approach. We had free rides for the first couple of months. Was very important. So definitely out there, we're looking at doing sponsored ads, boosting. City of Goodyear actually saw a lot of success with, I think, some mailers. I did not think that was actually going to be successful. I was like, oh, that's old school. But they saw a lot of feedback from that again. But City of Goodyear is different than from the City of Avondale. The City of Avondale on the north side, we were actually replacing an existing service. So I thought that was actually rather a little easier than the Goodyear side, that they had to start something from scratch, but they've seen some great success. Infrastructure. I wish I could tell you level 2, level 3. I think it's the amount of charging. Danae told me to make sure I say, some of this stuff, but I think it's the amount of, if there's like a slow charger, and then there is like the super fast chargers, which I actually was just installed, I think, right in the middle of our zone. I think right over on the Goodyear side, where there's some really fast chargers, I think on the level 2s. I think it's the amount of how fast it charges you, which is very important to a transit operations, because if I'm taking a lunch relief out there and they're taking the vehicle out to lunch and maybe they hook up to a fast charger, I want to make sure that the energy that gets into an EV is something that can work for the rest of the day, and that we're not having to take that vehicle out of service and bring it out, because that'll then lower the case of productivity. Jesus, oh my goodness, you got a question?
Matt, I'm always going to pelt you with questions.
Hey, we're taking good care of those federal funds for you.
So, here in Phoenix, we're always getting pinged about, are you guys going to ever do microtransit? And I see the pros and cons of it. I'm not afraid to dip our toe in it, but I'm glad you're the guinea pig, Matt. So my question is, on slide 6 of your presentation, you showed, I believe, 2 to 3 passengers per hour that you guys are moving. Am I interpreting that chart correctly?
Let's see, slide 6.
And if
Yes.
that's the case, my follow-up question is, what's the threshold for when you either roll out more vehicles or expand the service itself? Like, because 2 to 3, I'm sure you guys are handling
Yep.
today. What are you thinking is going to be the impetus for you guys to expand the service, either
So
like in hours or geography?
We were just meeting with RICO and First Transit on that like a few weeks ago, as we were looking at, say, hey, where's a threshold? Because we were seeing an uptick of ridership where we're about with those 3 vehicles, we were getting about 60 passengers per day. So I was like, hey, we have this criteria called failed searches. So if I was on there trying to book a trip and all of a sudden, hey, due to capacity, we can't accommodate your trip, book later. I wanted to know exactly, what was going to be that threshold. Where are we going to get, if we're at 60 per day with those 3 vehicles, where's that number? And they said with the current efficient that we're using, we can get to about 150 passenger trips per day without having to add another vehicle in there. So we do have a spare in there, but again, that's also depends on the algorithm. So if we added other types of services, fares can kind of do that thing too. So if right now with 3, we can accommodate about 150. Right now, we're about at 60 passengers per day, so a little less than half. So once we get to that 120 is when we start asking that question, hey, we may need to add another vehicle out there so we don't degrade that service, that 20 minutes or less type of service from the booking. And you do have that capability also where it is on demand, but we do have a 6-day kind of advanced reservation system where you can go in there and book your trips in the morning. But we do see a lot of demand, especially in the morning, which is very interesting because Estrella Mountain Community College wasn't a big user of the previous Zoom service, even though it served there and it was a pretty good service. When we started WeRide, boy, oh boy, that became our #1 destination, that and the Avondale Civic Center. So different types of service, again, different needs. People are looking for different types of transit services out there. So
Are there certain audiences that you're looking to attract or kind of appeal to? I could see this being really handy for even the elderly community that is looking just to get to, as you say, medical facilities or to shopping complexes, and that maybe they don't have the capacity to drive anymore and the price seems incredibly reasonable for them. you've got different cities involved with it, which might have different demographics. So I'm curious if there
Correct.
are certain groups that you're trying to reach through your marketing to
It
appeal
really
to.
can be anybody. So, for instance, the city is involved in the regional dial ride program, and we do have the ride choice program, which is kind of another version of that, which is very popular. That's for more of the, hey, you know what, I can't walk to a virtual stop, Matt, even though that virtual stop maybe is only 5 minutes away from that house. So it really is open to everybody. We see people use it for especially school. We have seen the elderly. Matter of fact, we're talking with the fire department next week because, as this goes out about, people ask questions like, hey, we as the fire department have, issues where we get to somebody's house and they said, hey, what I really need is just a ride to Walgreens. So we're looking at, hey, a potential partnership with the city's fire department where they can kind of give out some of these tickets to say, hey, you know what, instead of tying up city resources on the fire or the police side, hey, you know what, we have this type of service. So really it is open, it's a general public service, but and we see everybody going anywhere from the hospital to work, all of that. So it really is open to anybody. All right,
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
this is Karen. And to tag on to Jesus and Ann's question,
Mhm.
so I just pulled up your map, and your additional area that you're going to be looking at is south of the 10, basically,
Correct.
which
Yep.
is where a lot of the equity, lower income
Mhm.
folks live. Usually north of 10. It's I'm somewhat familiar with Avondale. My dad used to live in Avondale, so I've made quite a number of trips to Avondale. So I could see a lot of benefit into expanding into south of 10 to meet those equity, lower income, underserved community areas where they may not have so much car ownership or access to transit.
Yep, that is correct. So we have, the Civic Center, which is kind of one of our main pickup stops, which is also the end of the line for the Avondale Zoom South service. We also do have the Avondale Resource Center, which is kind of like just outside that zone off of Dysart and Riley. That stop actually is a dual zone stop. So if you're a Goodyear resident and you need to get to that destination, you can come in through there. But also from the Avondale side, we've seen, a lot of residents take Zoom to that particular location and then book a WeRide service into the north zone. So we definitely see that. Again, WeRide is, it's not a cheap service. So it's a demand response service. So a demand response service is always going to be pretty darn expensive compared to a fixed route service. Like you'll see in other types of areas. So there's a lot that kind of goes in to say, hey, you know what, if we do expand to the south, we need to understand, what's the cost of the Zoom on the south side? Will that work? Maybe that's the way to do it. But again, it's an evaluation to see, what's working the best for the residents at the cost that we're providing. So, and to follow up kind of on another question, what prompted me with when Jesus was talking about it was I was up in Seattle a couple months ago for a conference, and I was like, oh man, how could a microtransit service work in an area where there's some higher density there? There was a light rail line going through there, for crying out loud. So, but they did have a microtransit service, and so they were using it as kind of like a spoke system and said, hey, you can get picked up anywhere in this zone. And we'll say the zone was probably about 6 or 7 square miles, but it would only take you to a couple of the destinations inside there. So you can get picked up anywhere, even outside your own house, but they would drop you off at, for instance, I think there was a transit center in that zone, and there was also a light rail station. So from talking to that transit agency, they said, hey, it really wasn't going to work, as what I'm using microtransit is kind of like a suburban type of thing. But they said, hey, you know what? Instead of having circulators go out here, we can have this microtransit service that would pick people up anywhere and take them only to certain destinations in there. So I see the applicability of microtransit can be different things for different people. I'm using it as a replacement for a low performing circulator. City of Goodyear is using it for a whole different reason. Hey, probably a circulator or fixed route service. So but we can then connect to the larger Valley Metro services out there. We do have, I wish I had it with me, some bus stop signs that we're going to be putting up at, which is kind of our WeRide on-demand transfer point location. So where you can then book from WeRide, and we were thinking, hey, maybe it's even a change of the fare. Maybe that's $1, maybe it's 50 cents, heck, maybe it's even free. I don't want to say that, to maybe take from anywhere in North or South Avondale to go to certain select Valley Metro bus stops where they can then connect to the Valley Metro bus stops.
I see. So I'm curious, how is WeRide funded overall? Is it just absorbed within your public works budget? How do you finance it?
So right now, WeRide's being financed with a combination too. We have a transit fund here in Avondale, so it's being funded with the transit funds, but we also do have that capability for right now of using half the operations can be funded through some 5307 operations, as Avondale Goodyear is currently a small UZA. That won't be the case coming up here in the next year, but we do have some of those funds that we can then offset some of those costs as we go forward in the future.
So are the fees that you're collecting, I know you said it's kind of at a discount, so are they at least covering a certain portion of your?
Matter of fact, when we were putting this, like, you know what, let's talk about fare recovery. Some of them do. Seen agencies in California, they'll be about $5. It'll be like a couple percent fare revenue. Again, very dial-a-ride-ish, but we're actually saying no. As part of a pilot test program, I'm not even looking at the cost recovery aspect of the dollar or the $2 yet. What we get with that'll just be icing on the top. What type of service will this kind of provide for the greater Avondale community, and see how that works? But a lot of people do with our particular pilot test. Fare recovery is not necessarily one of those big KPIs that we're kind of looking at this point. It could change in the future.
Great.
Let's see. I know there was other questions. Sean, here we go. Sean Banda from Buckeye. Does the service cost reduce as several municipalities work together? I think it can. I think as you look at some of the larger implementations, you're adding more vehicles, those fixed costs that you have maybe spread over between, you know, 1 or 2 jurisdictions may be lower. You will have to add some additional fixed cost to that, but I think maybe in the long run, you can see maybe a lower service cost if you have, you know, where those fixed costs are being spread over a larger area. So possible. I don't necessarily know if that's a yes, but it's quite possible. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? I think that's it, right?
I just have an additional question. So what feedback have you been getting from your riders and your drivers? I'm curious. It looks like you have high ratings, like, you know, almost 5 stars, which is fantastic. Have you gotten some really interesting, I guess, feedback and comments?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I am going to share again here. I'm thinking, you know, just outside the box here. Let me see if I can pull this up here. All right. I think that's the right one. There you go. So this is, we receive this every single day. I'll come in first thing in the morning and I'll get this from RideCo. This is the company that does that. And again, they'll give me just about any information I want, from new accounts created for the week, the passenger types for the week, the search report of how it works. Again, so much data. I don't even know what to do with this data. I'm going to have to hire a senior management assistant just to go over this data, but it'll give me a driver report. One of the important things is feedback. I'll get a lot of, this is like the next day for driver feedback. So they'll go in there, and if you're on the app, you can see all this particular information, and you can say, hey, you know what? Great driver, excellent customer service, very polite. That's all great, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, how do I improve the service? Is there anything? So I'll get a lot of like, hey, you know what? Can you add weekend service? Can you add all this stuff? But we'll each individually get some information on that one. Calm and smooth ride. Here we go. Here's this one. Please add weekend service. I need this service to get to work on the weekend. I used Zoom before to do this in a way. This service is a downgrade. Most people say that is an absolutely horrible comment. I see that as a fantastic comment, you know, a comment for improvement and what we can do for the city to help improve that service in the future. So those are the types of comments that I'm always kind of looking for.
And Jesus had asked, remind us of the percentage of riders or rides that are shared.
Yep. Actually, I have another one on that. Oh boy, let me see if I actually have that up and running. So it's about 30% currently. Let me see if I can get. Here's the Rideco app. Let's see if I get that. It's currently at, I think, 30%. Boy, oh boy.
Are there other cities that are doing this type of program, or are you the only one?
No, actually, City of Chandler actually started their microtransit before us for a few months. So they do have their service kind of up and running. Oh boy, let me see. I'll have to show all windows to get this, but I won't waste everybody's time on that one. But right now we're currently operating at 30-some% on the share ride service. But City of Chandler is also operating. They are using a different company. It is very turnkey, very much like an Uber and Lyft service. They are using Via as their provider for microtransit service. So very familiar, same type of vehicles, just a different type of technology that they're using.
Great. And Jesus had another question for you in the chat as well. Do you have a high-level summary of the service cost?
Yes, matter of
monthly or
fact,
annually?
Jesus, I got the bill from First Transit right here. So currently for this year only, again, and this kind of goes into Sean's case. So right now, my cost per revenue hour, where traditionally fixed route bus service is kind of a cost per revenue mile. Microtransit, the nature being demand response, is a cost per revenue hour. Right now, our revenue hour for this year is about $85. And then as we kind of go and add service, Sean, this kind of goes to your question, is it'll slowly go down to about $75 per revenue hour, maybe in the next few years. So again, a very expensive service. So you have to make sure that you're doing this kind of in the right way. You just say, hey, I'm not going to put microtransit in downtown Phoenix. Absolutely not. You got light rail, you got fixed route bus services that kind of will work very well and more in a cost efficient manner. You got to use microtransit kind of in the best places. Hey, we're out here in a suburban community, very low ridership on a circulator that wasn't getting a lot of use. That's where your microtransit can fix. But again, just like I saw in Seattle, there can be other areas of implementation for microtransit that can be worked, but I think it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Great. Any other questions for Matt?
I think I went over 15 minutes, but I think, you know.
That's great. Oh, go ahead.
Matt, this is Sean from
Hey,
City
Sean.
of Buckeye. Hey, sorry, I'm trying to type as quick as I can while I'm on a field inspection. To the lines of shared costs, what about like a regional fleet? So instead of like, Avondale has their own fleet, wouldn't there be like an advantage to having, and this is what I asked when I met with your guy, of doing like, a Southwest Valley fleet that can be maintained and shared. Is that advantageous, you would think, or no?
It could. I mean, for instance, so the Avondale and Goodyear fleet, they are exactly the same. And they're interchangeable in between both cities. City of Surprise is coming back. It'll have the WeRide logo. I think the only difference will be is that they'll have a City of Surprise logo to kind of differentiate. But again, Surprise is kind of outside our zone, so their vehicles aren't necessarily going to connect into there. Just like Goodyear, or just like I think Buckeye, if there's a section in Buckeye, depending if it kind of connect, I think there could be the possibility of sharing, but it'll depend on, the distance between us. Avondale and Goodyear are right next to one another. So if my vehicle goes down here in the Avondale zone and there's an extra spare out there, and maybe there's some capacity, that vehicle can easily slip over into the Goodyear zone. So again, I hate to say it, Sean, but it goes on a case-by-case basis depending on where your zone's located. But I would not expect a Surprise vehicle to come down to either Goodyear or Avondale just because of the distance. But the vehicles do look alike. In a pinch, it could be maybe there's weekend service over there in Buckeye, where there wouldn't be weekend WeRide service here. You could easily use those vehicles to maybe go over there, since those vehicles wouldn't be used here during the weekend. So it could be.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Any other questions for Matt before we finish up?
And feel free, hey, you know what, if you're ever out in the Avondale zone here, feel free to come out and use the WeRide app, or even come over to the operations center here at Avondale Public Works if you're kind of curious or interested about microtransit, how it works. We did make the contract very open. And it was a federally procured contract. So if there's other cities that need to kind of jump on and maybe do a microtransit pilot, it is open there for as a cooperative for other cities to use.
Great, thank you. Well, I just want to say this has been really informative, and I'd love to try out this service. It sounds like so easy to use, and yeah, I would imagine it's popular, particularly amongst seniors and students. I would think the price is definitely right, and it sounds really easy to use, which I think is amazing. So I just want to say thank you, Matt, for your information. We'll be happy to share your PowerPoint presentation with folks in a PDF form afterwards, and then of course the recording of your presentation as well. Karen, do you have any last thoughts?
Just again, thank you, Matt. And I think you did Danae proud. So
I hope so. You know what? I got to get an EV here in the fleet, but yeah, I it's very interesting to see kind of, let's say the hurdles, and they're good hurdles that you need to really kind of bring an EV into a microtransit type of environment. I think it can be done, but I'm lucky I have somebody like Danae Pressler here that I can work with to get that information, to look at those lessons learned and to look at those hurdles to bring EVs into the microtransit fleet.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to, I guess, having you come back maybe in a year or so and tell us, kind of what the decision is, and maybe if other communities have decided to go that route. And maybe there will be more of a regional opportunity, because it seems like it fills an important gap in transportation for folks trying to get to and from different things like jobs and medical appointments, school, and whatnot.
Definitely.
So thank you so much.